RJ Young joins us. Of course, got the #1 show on Fox Sports that covers college football. RJ, let me start with the news of the day before we get to the college football playoff. Any chance Lincoln Riley leaves SC for Central Florida?
Well, I don't think they're sniffing just, out of something that they don't know. If they sense that he would like to leave that place, perhaps they're trying to initiate such a thing. And I don't know, Doug, 3 years ago, this man is the head coach at an Oklahoma that is going to the college football playoff, a few pieces away from playing for national championships. So it is quite unimaginable for me to think of you leaving Oklahoma only to end up in Central Florida in 3 years' time. So I don't know that he's going to go, but there's interest in that the $90 million buyout is not really that big a deal says a lot.
Yeah, I don't think there's any interest. I don't think they're sniffing for anything. I think they want attention, and they're doing what good athletic directors should do, which is like, hey, let's find somebody who's really good that might be a year or two away from getting fired and see if they want to restart the shot clock. I will point out, RJ, I'd like a little credit here. People said, hey, he's leaving because he's scared of the SEC. He's like, no, he knows it's almost impossible for you to win at Oklahoma to the level they want you to win at in the SEC. Is that fair?
No, it's not. It's not even a little bit fair. You know better than most people. It's Oklahoma, dog. 7 national championships, 7 Heisman Trophy winners. We rented a room at the college football playoff. Ole Miss doesn't do that. Auburn, who's won a national championship in the 21st century, they don't do that. All right? No, it is not out of the question. And Oklahoma, having a 6-6 year, still beats an Alabama team that looks destined to make the college football playoff. So that's 2 years in a row that Oklahoma would have a win against teams that are playing in the college football playoff. That it's 4 teams or 12 teams make no difference to me. Oklahoma's right where they want to be, and I think that, Lincoln could have had that spot too. Now it's Brent Venables'.
They're where they want to be?
Yeah, they're in the SEC. That's what everybody was clamoring for.
But are they, as a football program, they're a non-player. They have the residents, all that stuff has changed, RJ. I mean, honestly, the reason that it's not anything about Oklahoma, it's just they're in a deeper pool of teams that have and spend more money than they do. That's the reality of it. They just are.
I don't see it that way. And the reason that I don't see it that way is Oklahoma went 6-7 2022, won 10 games the next year. It's been ebbing more than it's been flowing here of late. But when Indiana can win 11 games, when SMU can make the ACC championship game.
That's in the ACC.
These are when Texas can make the SEC championship, which is where I was going.
Twice the money of Oklahoma. Twice.
And they've always had twice the money of Oklahoma, and we still managed to
You can spend it on players. Now you can go and actually buy the players legally. Buy them legally.
Okay.
I love your passion. I love your knowledge of Oklahoma. I'm going to tell you that
you think I'm an idiot about this though.
No, I just think in this, look, my argument for why the SEC should get 5, hell, even 6 teams in, is the same reason I think it's going to be really, really hard for Oklahoma to compete. Is those other schools, Oklahoma's all in on football, but the all in is totally different. The advantage they had in the Big 12 was they were historically dominant in that league, okay? And every year they were in the Big 12 championship, and they could go to all the kids in Texas and be like, look, all those other schools, even once A&M, and it hurt them a little bit when A&M got into the SEC, but all those other schools that are in the SEC, they're fighting, clash and scarring. We're in the Big 12 championship every single year, and we play close to home. Now, all those schools in Texas play close to home and are in the SEC. They can pay more money at A&M and at all those other schools, and you no longer have the historic dominance, nor do you have the spending dominance. You're not competing against Kansas and Iowa State and Oklahoma State. They're inferior programs based upon history and spending. That doesn't matter. The history doesn't matter anymore. All that matters is the amount of money that you have. That's what really matters. And that's why the SEC is so dominant. They have better players than everybody else. And this Oklahoma squad, I think, probably wins the Big 12.
Doug, you got an Oklahoma State of mind right now, right? Allow me. You're saying that Oklahoma is competing with Kansas State, Texas Tech, these teams for players when Oklahoma's been competing with Ohio State, Alabama, LSU.
RJ. Previously, they were playing against inferior opponents. They were the Yankees playing against the Rays, playing against the Indians, the Guardians, playing against the Royals. Now they're the Red Sox against the Yankees, the Dodgers. Like, all those teams have more money and spend more money than they do. They're not even the Red Sox. They just do. Look at their budgets. You're at the low end when they were number 2 in budget and number 1 in history in the Big 12 and Big 8.
Doug, I'm from a state that was created out of thin air in the 20th century. I'm from a place that has tornadoes and dust bowls. I'm from a place that doesn't really always have the advantages that you're talking about, and yet and still manage to show up and beat people when it's time to beat people. This too will pass. It's going to be okay. Oklahoma's in the SEC. It's a bad year by Oklahoma standards. They're still going bowling. It's the only team in the state that is. I think that they're going to be just fine. Now, I think you're also onto something when you talk about where you're putting the money. But when Ohio State can spend $20 million to not beat Michigan, there's only so much that the money's going to do. At one point or another, you got to get the coaching right, and that's one of the things that Oklahoma's been able to do historically. But also, this is a bigger point, right? And I think you and I can form up on Voltron on this. The injuries that happened to Oklahoma this year should never happen. You've got injuries all up and down that roster. I think that's Jerry Schmidt. I think you got to call to task. Why don't we have our best players on the football field for most of the year? And why is it that we can go and beat Alabama with second and third stringers when we can't even get it up to beat a Tennessee team that we should probably beat, so forth, so on? I think it's just a series of bad events that have happened for Oklahoma, but I don't think this is Oklahoma's new normal.
Okay, let's get to the college football playoff rankings, okay? Help me make sense of it. Here's the first one. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. Ward Manuel said there's no new data points for teams that aren't playing this weekend. I'm looking at South Carolina that just beat Clemson at Clemson. Clemson plays SMU. If Clemson beats SMU, they're the ACC champion. That's a new data point for South Carolina. Why will the committee not look at South Carolina through a different lens if Clemson wins this weekend?
I've thought that this committee is off its rocker from the jump. That's one, right? Boise State being one of your top 4 highest-ranked conference champions, give me a break, man. So that on its face. But if South Carolina's name was Oklahoma, they'd be in the college football playoff. And it sucks to say it that way, but you look at their resume. They got 6 wins against top 25 programs. Their only losses are against top 25 programs. They played a tough schedule, and they won 9 friggin' games. You know, they beat a Tennessee team that should be Tennessee team. They beat a Clemson team that should be in the college football playoff any other year and still could get there. I'm with you. I think that there are still data points to beat. That's why we're playing conference championships, because they're new data points. I also think that this committee doesn't know if it's coming or going, you know, because on the one hand, they tell me they value wins. On the other hand, anybody that looks at SMU's resume will tell you they've got 2 wins against teams that are above 500. It's not a great schedule. The loss to BYU doesn't look so good now that BYU's not playing in the Big 12 championship. I think that Ward Manuel is in the spot that every chair has been in since we created this thing, which is you're one of the bulletproof vest for a bunch of suits that I don't think watch football the way that I watch football, the way that you watch football. We're better at this than they are, but we still have to live with their results. And let me add this part to it. You know that this committee can and probably will choose violence, because there's nothing in here to say that they got to pick our highest ranked conference champion. They don't have to pick conference champions. They got to pick the 12 best teams. And if they thought that Kent State was one of them and none of the others are conference champions, they could do that. We don't trust this group, and we don't trust this institution as they put it together. Somebody is going to have to take back controls or put some more governance on this committee, because I'm telling you, this will be the first and the last time that a G5 program gets one of those highest Power 4 spots that we thought were going to go to Power 4 schools. Now we're looking around going, really? Are we going to give this to Boise State, Nash, and Janty so they can go get their butts kicked by Ohio State? Really? Nobody wants that. I think you're right. I think there's a new data point. I think if SMU can get the win, everybody looks fine. But if Clemson gets the win, then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, the Boise State thing. It's like, it's one of those, we've gone, and the pendulum swings, right? We've gone from hey, we got to make sure these guys are part of this thing, right? Because the reality of the financial aspect of the sport is you have to have the non-Power 4 conferences involved. You have to have them part of it, because those guarantee games make a lot of money for a lot of people. They just do. Okay? You need them to be. You need everybody to feel like they're a part of it. So you got to give them a spot. But one of the top 4 seeds, what are we doing? SMU, one of the top 4 seeds. What are we doing? Right? And even Indiana, it's like we're falling for the old banana in the tailpipe. You beat the ACC, but you beat the bottom of the ACC. Indiana, all the teams they beat were at the bottom of the Big Ten. Literally, look at their wins. They're all over the bottom of the Big Ten. Even the Michigan win, which looks better now, they beat Ohio State. Like, Michigan was like 7th place in the Big Ten. The only Big Ten team that they beaten that has an above 500 record was Michigan. And they played Ohio State. Granted, it's a hard game. It's on the road. They couldn't complete a forward pass. We're putting them as one of the 12 best teams in the country? It makes zero sense to me. Zero sense to me.
I think we're going to have the quiet part out loud. I think we're going to have to start talking about the quiet part out loud, which is that we're going to want to put teams in these spots that rate. Teams that have large followings, teams that we know people are going to show up for.
I don't think it has anything to do with ratings. I honestly think it has to do with the legitimacy. Like, college football has changed. People that spend the money. It doesn't mean it's the magic elixir to every problem. Okay? But teams that spend the money have better players, have better coaches, and are better. And they played against harder schedules, against better teams. Like, that's the reality of it. Just the reality of it. So I think everyone who's all the coaches in the sport, off air, off mic, will tell you that. Oh, the SEC is the best. It's a different sport. And then when they have to come to talk about their conference, they're like, look, Indiana should get in. Penn State, Ohio State. Like, what are we doing? I mean, even Penn State's resume is very, very, very slim. Very slim. Like, there's not a lot of meat on that bone. But they're Penn State, and they kind of look the part. They spend a lot of money. I'm like, all right, we'll let them in. But, man, the Indiana thing, the Boise thing, the SMU thing makes zero sense to me. Last thing, RJ, if you had to guess, and it's not an easy guess, who wins this thing? Who is it?
I mean, nobody's beaten Oregon yet, man. Like, that's just it. Nobody's beaten that team, and Dan Lanning has one of the more complete teams in the sport, because that's what it's become for me. It's who plays great defense, who plays great offense. Having a better defense than a better offense is going to probably give you a better shot to win a championship, like Texas, right? Texas reminds me of 2021 Georgia. They're good enough offensively to go get you 40 if they need to, but that defense has been playing lights out. They get a chance to show that in the SEC championship game this weekend. I think that Dan Lanning also gives you coaches making a play, which is something I've been huge on this year. Did the coach make a great timeout? Did he call a great trick play? Did he call the right fake punt at the right time? Dan Lanning has that stuff in his back pocket, and he wants this more than I think any other coach in the country wants this, and that matters. So right now, it feels like the only team left in the entire sport that is undefeated is going to run the table and win the 12-team college football playoff for the first time, get Oregon their first national championship.
That's R.J. Young. Okay, check out his show. Okay, you can download it. He's the host of the #1 show podcast on Fox Sports. R.J., great stuff. We'll talk soon, okay?
Love you, Doug. Thanks for having me on.
I love you.